Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining this week's Next Normal series from Worth Live on how a stay-at-home culture is changing the entertainment industry. I have to commend Molly McLoone, our producer, on the music choice this afternoon. Firstly, I hope you and your loved ones are keeping well during what continues to be a challenging time for so many people. I'm Juliet Scott-Croxford, CEO at Worth Media and your moderator for today, and I'm delighted to be joined by our special guest today, David Eilenberg, Chief Creative Officer at ITV America, Tracy Christian, Partner and President of TCA MGMT, and Kathleen Entwistle, Managing Director and Private Wealth Advisor at Morgan Stanley Private Wealth Management. Hi, speakers.
Hello.
Hi, Juliet.
Hi.
Hi.
We'll explain why David's in a car shortly. But our intention at Worth is to create conversations that help inspire and inform our community, many of whom are entrepreneurs, investors, and business leaders who want to leave a positive impact on the world and help to create a more inclusive and equal economy and society for the benefit of everyone. And we call that Worth Beyond Wealth. So we hope you enjoy this session and find it entertaining and interesting. Forward thinking is really the essence of this series, The Next Normal, where Worth is looking ahead to what the world looks like in this new environment that we're now all living in. If there is one industry at odds right now, it's entertainment. And while one survey found that 47% of Americans had increased their streaming time around the onset of the stay-at-home orders following the pandemic, the live aspect of the industry has faced incredible challenges. So we're delighted to be joined by industry experts today, David Eilenberg, Chief Creative Officer at ITV America, Tracy Christian, Partner and President of TCA MGMT, and Kathleen Entwistle, Private Wealth Advisor at Morgan Stanley, to share their perspectives on how the industry is shifting and what's next in entertainment. A few housekeeping rules before we get started. You're all familiar with this format, I know by now. It's a conversation, and we really do welcome interaction and questions from you. So please do use the chat function, share your thoughts, share any questions you have for the speakers. We can unmute you, or if you prefer to stay anonymous, we can weave it into the conversation as we go. So let's get started. Firstly, a personal check-in on how you're all doing personally. And I'd love to hear from you briefly about your background and how you became involved in this field. David, let's start with you, because I know you've had a slightly unusual 30 minutes.
Sure. So I was just saying before we started, I can't think of anything more indicative for me of the current moment than the fact that just as we were starting this, my house lost power, which meant I lost wireless, which meant I lost my ability to connect to this seminar in any way. So I've driven to a side of the road where I do have cell reception and some shade, toggled in through my cell phone, and that's just producing. And I think that's what we're doing, not just in entertainment, but in many aspects of our lives. So I'm glad I was able to figure it out and be here with you all. I've been in the non-scripted side of the business for really my entire career of almost 20 years at this point. And as Chief Creative Officer of ITV America, I oversee sales and development for all of our labels here in the United States, as well as interfacing with ITV companies around the world. So really what I do is sell, develop, and produce unscripted TV of most sorts.
Thank you for your resilience, David, as well, and for joining us despite the challenges you've had today. It's great to see you. And Kathy, let's go to you next. How you're doing, and a brief background on you, but also the connection into the sort of entertainment, sports, and media world.
Sure. Thanks, Juliet, and it's great to be here with David and Tracy. So yes, I am a private wealth advisor. I help clients really understand and identify their priorities when it comes to goals and values, and then help them put together a financial plan, which I think is the basis or the foundation of how to move from where you are today to where you want to be. And particularly in the entertainment or sports industry, there's a lot of fluctuation when it comes to income, and there can be a lot of surprises that come along the way. COVID is a perfect example, in the conversation we're having today, and we will have today, discusses the disruptions that come along that are unexpected and that we can't necessarily plan for. So we have to plan for, overall general obstacles. So that's what I like to do. I love to help people and help them put together a strong plan and help them get to that point. I have clients in the entertainment and sports industry. And so when I came to Morgan Stanley, I've been in this business for over 20 years and built up a really nice business during that time. But coming to Morgan Stanley, they gave me a designation called Global Sports and Entertainment Director. So I'm one of a select few advisors at Morgan Stanley that have that title or designation. And it's really because we have the experience and the background to help people with in entertainment and sports manage their money properly for their best interest, and so that they make good choices going forward.
Thanks, Kathy. And Tracy, hi, you've spent a small amount of time in the entertainment space. I think it's a little over 28 years?
25. Yeah.
25 years. Okay, so welcome. And it would be great if you could share who you are and just a brief background on sort of how you came into the industry and how you've evolved since.
My name is Tracy Christian. I'm president of a boutique talent agency called TCA and GMT. I've only ever been an agent in the business. I've never worked on a set, never been a manager, nothing. I had an internship that lasted about a week at a management company. And actually, John Singleton was the person who told me I should be an agent. And there's a very off-color story that goes along with that. But the punchline is he said I should either be a madam or an agent, and I chose agent. That's my story.
Thank you, Tracy. And who, in terms of the talent that you look after, it's across writing, producing, acting?
Writing, producing, directors, a handful of well-placed production companies, yes. And I too have been working, in addition, in the scripted business and the talent business, in unscripted since probably 2008.
Great, thank you. So let's just start with the macro picture of how the industry has been impacted over the past 6 months, whether it is scripted, unscripted, or I want to get onto the talent side of things as well. David, how have you seen the entertainment field evolve, especially in sort of the film and TV realm?
I mean, obviously, clearly the biggest challenge has been around production itself. So when we all went on lockdown, March 13th here in California, production came to an immediate halt. And it took quite a while for people to even think about producing again. So we lost about a full quarter to that. I think our first productions really started just getting back into place in June and July. And even today, there are types of shows that are not producible under COVID. So one of the things that the industry has been grappling with is how do you produce shows safely? What are the types of shows that you can produce safely? And then, of course, how do you contend with the cost and logistical complexity of doing so? Epidemiology is not something you want to improvise. So everybody had to get expertise really quickly in order to protect all of the contributors to those shows. So that has been the overriding challenge. I mean, there are many that go along with it and impact of programming and viewing and consumption and the rest. But for us, it's really just been about how do we make the things that we make in a way that's safe for the people who are making them.
And you're back in live production now, right?
We are back in live production on shows of various genres, big and small, including the US version of Love Island, which we are producing in a full bubble quarantine in Las Vegas. And that's a big undertaking. We're shooting an episode a day and airing an episode a night. So we've certainly learned a lot through this experience. And I think there are many aspects of it that will hopefully at some point become inapplicable, but many aspects of it that may actually be applicable going forward and things that we can apply to our workplace protocols and culture going forward.
And Tracy, how has it impacted entertainers and people on the talent side of the business?
Oh, I mean, it cut through us like a hot knife in butter. It changed everything. Nothing is the same. And I don't know to what degree things will ever get back to what they were before. We have a new normal. When you contend that the average working actor, in entertainment, we make most of our money through television. And between the government mandated quarantines and people's personal quarantines, as David was saying, for at least a quarter, there was no production, very limited production. And then what we're struggling with is creating kind of a code of contact, and what the protocols are, because certainly we know Canada has one standard, and Europe, the balance of Europe has another standard. We shoot quite a bit in South Africa, and there's another protocol there. The American passport not being accepted in the way that it once was. When I tell you that everything is different, the numbers are different in terms of, you're traveling to Canada to shoot a guest star. That used to be an 8-day transaction. Well, that's trebled because of quarantine. So nothing is the same. And as David said, very quickly, not only have we had to try to determine what the protocols would be, but get everyone up to speed and in an agreement. That's been the major challenge. And I feel for producers and networks because of the increased expense too. And I think we're going to see a wave of, even with these protocols in place, I think we're going to see a wave of litigation, because people will get sick on set. And then what does that mean for insurance carriers and production?
It's so complex. How, when you're managing talent, or Kathy, when you're managing clients in this space, what's the impact to them sort of from a livelihood point of view and from a financial point of view, and how do you help them navigate that?
I'm happy to answer, but Tracy, why don't you share first and then I'll go after you. If you were asking, I thought you were asking Tracy as well.
No, you.
Both, yeah, well,
okay. Sorry. Yes, I would say sorry, Trace. Sorry. Start over. Live TV, you don't have that chance, right? But so yeah, I mean, all of our clients, every time we work with a client, every client has a financial plan. It sounds so boring, but it's so important. And that's basically making sure that you have money set aside for emergencies. You need to have liquid money set aside. And it's the hardest thing to do because nobody wants to leave money just sitting on the sidelines, but it's really important to have that emergency fund or some access to money under these circumstances, because people who were used to earning a lot of money during, working, all of a sudden they can't work anymore. And to manage that, you have to have like a long-term view, and you have to have like cash flow set up properly to get people through those difficult times. I do agree it's really challenging with lawsuits. I felt that part of, the shutdown had to do with companies and maybe it's production companies, whatever it may be, worrying about lawsuits and the risk and the liability there. But it's also teaching us all to be less social. And I don't think people want to get back in the mix anymore, not because we've trained everybody almost not to be part of this social mix anymore. And before we came on, I was telling you and David and Tracy that I've actually watched a lot of Love Island, which is one of David's television shows. And I think it's because I miss the social interaction with all of my friends. And it's like kind of fun to see a group of people interacting and seeing what that's all about. I mean, that social aspect is so important. And again, for clients, you know, it's their careers, it's their livelihoods, and there's so much uncertainty around it. So when you try to, you know, you have to sort of pull back and change your habits right now, which I don't think is that difficult for a lot of people to do based on the fact that we can't travel, we can't do, there's not a lot of reasons to spend money right now, but it's a really important time to reduce your spend and to, you know, to save as much as you can until we know what the future holds, what's around the corner.
And what's the impact been, David, maybe you can answer this, what's the overall impact, economic impact been on the industry? Do we have an understanding of that? Yeah, I mean, I know you said for a quarter it was kind of on hold.
I mean, I think it's still early to predict. I do think, you know, observationally, it seems to have yielded some clear winners, especially in the streaming space. I think when you look at what's happening with Netflix and Amazon, and some of those platforms that were already sort of asserting dominance, this period of everybody being at home and sort of consuming content, not just on a schedule, but sort of all the time, on and off, has fed into the growth of on-demand viewership, which has been coming for a while. I just think it happens to have accelerated it. You know, conversely, you have to look at what may be happening in the advertising space right now. Advertising spends are down because I think people, understandably, don't think consumers are going to buy much anyway. To what Kathy was saying before, like, I think if everybody's ceasing to spend, advertisers know better than to advertise to you. We'll see how that bounces back as we get into the sort of first part of next year. But yeah, I think to me, at least observationally, some things that were going to take sort of 5 years are probably now taking about 1. And that's both in terms of how viewers are consuming content and then how we sort of structure our businesses for the future of how our clients are going to purchase it.
And if we go behind the scenes, because it feels like the unscripted TV has been the quickest to get back to live production. So whether it's Love Island or Real Housewives or Great British Bake Off that someone just mentioned, it's one of my personal favorites. Why is that? And then sort of going behind the scenes, could you share like how different it is from before?
So I think some of it is just time, which is to say a typical unscripted show, whether it's a performance show or a game show or a show like Love Island, gets executed in a fairly concise timetable, right? So Love Island pole to pole is about 4.5 weeks of production, and it's much easier, therefore, to go to people and say, come into a bubble. I mean, just as the NBA playoffs have done. On the other hand, and Tracy can speak to this a bit, for a big scripted show, a drama or a comedy that's turning out 22 episodes a year and may take a week or more to shoot each of those episodes, I don't actually even really know how you bubble that. So other protocols have to be devised. And, you know, I think that's very much a work in progress. I think, you know, as I say, some of it's just math.
David's absolutely right. I mean, there's one typically unscripted shows cost, you know, what, 75% less than scripted programming. You also, when you continue, look at a show like Handmaid's Tale, right? All the prep that goes into preparing those sets, just the number of moving pieces. And then if Lizzie Moss, you know, gets COVID, what does that mean for the series? Well, it shuts down until she's able to resume production. You know, if someone gets sick on, you know, one of the Housewives franchise, that person has an opportunity to quarantine themselves and the narrative can continue, you know, but it's very different in scripted, right? So it's just more moving parts, financially a little bit more at stake. And David, God willing, 22 episodes, God willing, 22 episodes, but yeah.
Tracy, I'm just finishing season 2 of Handmaid's Tale at the moment, and wow, it's
prescient, right? Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving on to future, and what does the future look like? Tracy, do you see some of these changes that we've gone through in the past 6 months here to stay? And do you think actually some of the changes that we've seen are actually a positive thing for the industry?
That's a big question. So, Tyler Perry, I think, was one of the first big producers to figure out, the bubble environment, and has done that very successfully. I think he always shot very fast, but I think now they're shooting an episode a day. Like his shows are run like a soap. And if you can manage that, there's an incredible cost savings there. This person wants to put the Fab Five in a bubble for Queer Eye. But there's an incredible cost savings. And so I think for shows that maybe, certain, lower budget nighttime soaps, that might be an applicable business model, because his shows, he was able to produce his shows much faster, and they didn't suffer on the same level of quality that he normally puts out. Where I do see a big savings and a big change in the industry is we have learned, we can conduct an upfront without bringing, 2,500 people out to New York. I think film festivals are going to look different. Definitely, when I look at my budget for travel, for 2019 versus this year, that'll never be the same, right? Because the thing that happened during COVID, production halted, but business didn't. We were all, if anything, I think we all worked harder, as an industry. We really, people really fought back. And we've learned we can still do the same level of business or greater, and we don't have to do it in a plane or in, a 30,000 square foot office. We can be just as efficient from our dining room table.
Tracy, I was going to say my 25-year-old works for Initiative, and one of her favorite parts of her job is going to the upfronts. So she really misses that.
Sorry to take that from her.
So it sounds like writing continued, business continues, but there's a backlog in production. Is that right? And I mean,
yes, there's a huge, this year, this is one for the books. Like, I cannot wait for 20 years from now. I'm going to go back to USC, and I want to take a history class and just, observe 2020. We had the writer's strike, right? Like, never in the history of Hollywood did we need content more. Never was there a more ready audience. And there was a writer's strike, right? And then in terms of production, obviously we had COVID. I mean, when you talk about perfect storm, we are definitely the Egyptians, and there's some plagues going on here in LA.
What do you guys think of, one of the things I've been thinking about with COVID, though, is that all of these, the very talented people, the creatives, can't utilize their talent where they normally do. And usually I think that we will see those people do other things during this time period to create, might be in a different way, but I almost expect some really cool things coming out of COVID, because those who have the creativity, whether it's actors or producers or entertainers, it's also, doctors that are used to like working with their hands, and maybe they're not working, there was a time period they weren't. It's like using your brain and the creativity to create other things that we're not expecting. I'm curious, when you go take that history class, if they find some of that out too.
I'll let you know.
What about the technical side of things? So David, how have you how have you innovated production and particularly sort of editing during this time? And is that something that's an improvement on what it was before?
Yeah, so it was interesting. The very first thing that had to happen, because we knew production was going to stop, but we had to keep post-production going. We had multiple shows in edit that still needed to be delivered. And so one of the things we had to do, because people couldn't be in offices either, was get 330 working edit suites onto editors' computers at home within the space of about a week. And we managed to do it. And what's been really interesting is that it actually works. So that then raises questions and potentially opportunities, right? Which is, if many of your post producers and editors are as good working at home, probably happier not to have to commute, and then perhaps you don't have to have quite the same commercial real estate footprint, isn't that a net positive? And could it yield other net positives? So one of the things that I think could be a net positive result of this, as more sort of creative functions are able to be done remotely, is can we increase geographical diversity within the industry? Because so much emanates from New York and LA, and even more than it's ever done. You know, is this the opportunity to really tap into creatives elsewhere? And there are, you know, financial opportunities in that, but I also just think really big cultural opportunities. And that part of the disconnect right now between culture and politics is that all of our culture is emanating from two places. So, you know, there's some things that this could yield that have real net benefits both to the industry and I think culture as a whole. And finally, I would just say the UK has done a better job of that already. If you want to look to a model, just in terms of saying stuff needs to be produced out of Manchester and Leeds and Belfast, and like those communities and those economies are important, but those voices are also important. And I think we may have a chance to do similarly.
Yeah, I remember really acutely when the BBC moved up to Manchester. That was kind of a big turning point for a lot of others to follow suit. Let's touch on diversity and inclusion. And obviously we had the pandemic followed by the devastating murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and others. And obviously that amplified and really sort of showcased sort of the racial injustices across the globe. Tracy, your thoughts on how the entertainment industry is doing in that regard, and what impact the last few months has had on the racial justice movement to entertainment?
You know, I've been very pleased with the response from my industry. It's affirming, you know. I can say this movement started several years ago with the Me Too movement, and frankly, an industry really being able to self-police and saying, you know, the way we've treated the lack of opportunity for, you know, women directors, the lack of content, you know, that we produce and purchase that comes from the LGBTQ population, the pulling down of strongholds of people like Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby. Like, there was definitely a time, and it wasn't long ago, where that would just be covered up. You know, it would kind of be a, you know, state secret that people kept. So now the work, I think we've hung the posters, we've sang the songs. Now we do the hard work of all of us looking at our own companies, our own infrastructure, and ourselves, and what are the changes that we need to institute on a micro level. Because on a macro level, every network, every large production company, they have either a diversity person or programs or outreach or what have you. But none of that means anything if human beings aren't behind it, if that's actually not our intent, you know, to create opportunities for women and people of color. And I'm excited and I'm hopeful in what I see. You know, here at TCA, we obviously diversity is part of our DNA. I own the company. And I also represent the Urban League, of Los Angeles. They're a corporate client. And as we go out to the marketplace and introduce the Urban League and the opportunity, like to help different companies build out their diversity outreach, the response, I'm very pleased and very, very hopeful with the response. So that's one side. And the people who are resistant to that are nakedly beyond resistant in ways that you can't possibly fathom. It is if, you know, you are calling a company in Selma, Alabama, and it's 1952. There still are those management companies where, you know, the only women that have a presence, the receptionist, and she's wearing a short skirt and a tight sweater. Like that still exists in our industry. And I'm talking too long, but we are building the financial models to show people like that diversity is profitable. It's not just what you should do and aspire to as a human being, but that it's profitable. If you produce content that allows people to see themselves on television or in feature films, they will purchase, right? Like they will watch those shows, they will buy those films. So I have a lot of hope.
And it's engaging as well. I think it's engaging content. David, I think ITV's done a remarkable job at producing diverse content. Just share a bit about like how that's instilled in the culture at ITV and how you think about creating content that appeals to a diverse range of audiences.
I mean, thank you. Although I will just caveat by saying we have lots of work to do and we're doing it. And we have DEI initiatives going on now that we didn't even a few months ago. So like everybody, we can improve. I think our sort of corporate culture in America is built as almost an operating system to uplift creators. So it's not hierarchical by its nature. And some of that's by design and some of it's historical, which is just like, you know, there's no single person whose taste it is that we all have to sort of bow to, right? Our job is to facilitate great developers and creators of different sorts. And then I think there is just a desire to find content that is daring and that you're proud of and succeeds on its own terms. And like, we were incredibly nervous to reboot Queer Eye because if we'd done it wrong, that would have been really something we'd all have to live with for quite a long time. So some of it is just like being really thoughtful about representation, especially when there are such high stakes involved. So, you know, it's a little bit of a wishy-washy answer because it's culture. It's not a program, but I think culture requires upkeep. And so hopefully that's what we're trying to do.
But David, I have to say the thing that it makes me proudest of what you guys did is that you have a willingness to ask the questions, right? And to your I'm going to steal that, culture requires upkeep, because Queer Eye today is very different than Queer Eye when it first appeared on Bravo. We have to have a willingness and the bravery to ask the questions, to say, so here's a show that I think is great. You guys tell me what you think. Am I totally off base? Is this insulting, right? Because I can tell you as one of those, you know, groups, that's the dialogue that I want to have. And then I think that feeds into our political system. Like once people are educated and understand these various groups, we produce different, more sensitive, more intellectual, evolved human beings.
And so is that, have you seen that process happen more since sort of over the last few months? Has there been more of a dialogue in the sort of pre-production space for those conversations as you're starting to bring back some of these things, just to question, is it offensive?
Definitively. And again, I think, you know, Tracy, you linked this directly to me too, which was the sort of dominant cultural movement prior to this moment. I mean, similarly here, people are, you know, in deep dialogue about it in ways that prior to now, and hopefully good results emanate from that. So yeah, there's been a seismic shift, a seismic shift in time spent and attention spent and questions asked. What will be interesting in the next phase is that very big conglomerates have made very public commitments of hundreds of millions and billions of dollars to diverse voices and businesses. And it'll be really interesting to see what that all means and where it all goes. Because I think intent and dialogue are fantastic. And I think job creation is really a meaningful thing to do, but let's see where the money gets spent too, as that all transpires.
And Tracy, how will recruiting talent change? How do you think the recruitment of new talent will change as we go forward based on this?
It's interesting. It's an interesting question. So when I've always taken on a creative, I've probably the reason I don't have as much money as I should is I come from a place of passion, and I really want to fall in love with the artist. And I don't care, what race, religion, whatever. I'm not thinking about what the industry trends are. I'm thinking about just the work. And, fortunately, just using my aesthetic, I've been able to do well. When I speak to my colleagues, particularly at some of the larger agencies, now they have these mandates that they are going to like historically Black colleges, and they're recruiting, agents, or, we really hadn't, focused on diverse talent. Now let's go out there and, get diverse talent. And in one way, I'm like, that's great. But I also kind of feel like, wait, so our industry has been around for 100 years. So for 100 years, you slammed the door in our face. And now that it's politically expedient to do something different, now you expect us to come running and give you our best and our brightest? Yeah, I'm not, that's not exactly Gucci to me. I don't know how I feel about that. And to David's point, there are a lot of people who start the program, but they really they're not building the resource or the infrastructure so that these people can advance, right? Again, I'm not impressed that you hired, 35 people of color to be assistants. That's change. That's change, but I don't think that's change that's something that's going to change the industry. You have to make a real investment and a commitment to diversity at levels where these people have their stakeholders, right? And that's the change that needs to happen.
Tracy, I would agree with you, because I think just in businesses in general, whether it's your business or a Fortune 500 company, there's usually coming into management levels or hired levels, it's equal women and men. I'm not so sure it's equal people of color. I think that's probably very, skewed still. But what we're finding is that by the time we get to the C-suite, the
Right.
women have dropped out, right? So there's something going on there that needs to be changed as well. And I'd say that's for both women and people of color, that we have to, consider that. And any area that is, any person that's getting marginalized in a sense, right? We have to make sure that we're providing the same support. It's interesting because, finance, understanding your financial picture is one of the most important areas that we can help individuals, become more independent and have a better chance at opportunities. And teaching people to negotiate for what they're worth is really important too. So I think the whole financial wellness area, it's a big area that firms like Morgan Stanley are focusing on, where we're going into companies and organizations and providing financial wellness for everybody from, the assistants to the C-suite executives, because everybody needs to have that foundation or basis for moving forward. And whether it's what you probably do so well, help your clients negotiate and, you know, take a stance on what their worth is and what they're going to be doing. Or, you know, David, when you're looking at who you're hiring for talent or what type of programs you're going to bring to the table, when you have people who understand that and can have those conversations with you, it's going to lift them up even more too, I think.
I think it'll happen in stages, and you know, um, the easiest thing to have happen first is how individual projects get staffed and cast, because individual projects are starting all the time, so that change can happen now. What's going to be harder, I believe, is change at the corporate level, which you already flagged, and especially right now when everybody is grabbing as hard as they can to their jobs, and it's not like companies are adding a ton of headcount. I think it's going to be more painful and more difficult to make the changes that are necessary inside the corporate suite. It will happen, but I think it will happen more in fits and starts. Although there have been some early big hires and some big promotions already. You know, you look at Bella Bajaria now being arguably the most powerful person in all of television. And you know, that's a woman of culture now overseeing Netflix globally. And some things are starting to click.
Yeah, definitely ABC has made major strides, CBS. Yes, you're absolutely right. But it's let's see how much latitude those people are given and how much support too. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you, as a, you know, again, coming through the system as an agent, lots of times you might have the title and you're in the meeting and you come up with an idea and it's not supported, and then what do you do?
And David, it's great that you've got a female CEO in Carolyn McCall, who was the outgoing CEO when I came into The Guardian, and then she went to EasyJet, and then she joined ITV. How much did she, I mean, I'm sure a big part of the leadership and the sort of culture and the focus on diversity and inclusion is coming from the top, right?
It is indeed, and I've been really impressed with the specificity of the commitments that our top leadership, starting with Carolyn, have made publicly, because I think that's important too, which is to go on the record, not just that you're going to do something, but actual numerical targets and commitments as to what it is you're going to do and within what time frame. So I think, you know, as I sort of look at everybody's sort of DEI statements, that's what I look for first, which is, have we said, we're going to hire someone to help us with this? Or have we said, no, actually in actual numbers, here's how many jobs we're going to create. Here's what our crews need to look like from a percentage basis. Here's the amount of funding we're going to put behind diverse creators who are doing their projects for the first time. Because it's when you see the specifics that you can actually render a judgment as to whether people are serious about the commitment or just signaling. And certainly,
whether you've been successful or not. Yeah.
I mean, I'm proud of ITV and to be working for somebody like Carolyn, who from the very beginning has been specific in public.
And you can measure it, right? And if you're not making the progress you want, you can then kind of change your approach.
Yes.
That's great to hear. What about, so I want to talk about investing in the space in the last few minutes, and also what support has talent received, particularly talent that's out of work and not being able to work. How have they survived? Have they and what support has been given to them? Because I'm sure the impact on them has been significant, right? Tracy?
Sure. Yeah. So my agency, as best we could, we tried to be a bit of a clearinghouse for information. So lots of people were able to participate in the PPP program. You know, most actors have, or a lot of our more established actors have their own production companies, and they might have, you know, 1 or 2 employees or more. So the PPP program was very helpful. We have the EIDL program here in the States, the economic something disaster. I can't remember all. And then there have been I think the business community has really shown up in a way that, as a business owner, I appreciate, and that information I've been able to pass on to my clients. There have been an amazing number of grants and loan opportunities and SBA-backed programs. So I think, you know, creatives have been able to put together kind of a financial package that makes sense for them. Like in our case, between the available grant structure, the ongoing business, the business that we were generating, you know, all of these things, we're actually expanding the company right now. And, you know, by the end of the year, we'll probably double in size.
That's phenomenal.
I also, and I'm sure Kathy can speak to this too, like it depends what sector you're in. So if you're a documentary filmmaker or an animator, you're booked through 2023. Like you're very much in demand. If you're a musician, you're in trouble and you don't know when you're going to be able to start touring again. It's been, you know, it's really been sector by sector in entertainment, which you just try to have empathy for the people who have been the most affected. And if you're a collaborator with them, or, you know, guiding their career or guiding their finances, you do try to help them think about other ways to generate income if their income has been, you know, cut off.
Well, a big part of the Worth audience are investors. When it comes to investing in the entertainment industry, what would be your best advice? Kathy, I'll come to you first, but what should people be thinking about?
I guess, you know, just thinking, I would say Tracy and David, you know, they have their fingers on the pulse of what's going on directly. And I might be a little bit more removed in a sense because I'm talking to my clients and so forth. But I've had plenty of clients invest in Broadway shows and, you know, different types of entertainment. It's tough right now. I think the industry is a tough industry right now, and there's lots of bright spots that Tracy and David both highlighted. But I would say that this industry is just very difficult right now. So the investments, I think the investment opportunities are probably where Tracy was mentioning a lot of actors and they might have their own production companies, or they might be looking for some, you know, capital to support that, a lot of private investments. And then in terms of the industry itself, I mean, certainly if you invested in some of the companies that we mentioned earlier, you did well with those investments, but it's a matter of where is this business going? It's like everything else. Where is this business going and where are the opportunities? It's no longer, you can't look backwards anymore. You have to look forwards and think about the transformation of the business entirely. Is it going to be more unwritten, you know, sort of way of doing business, or is it going to be more scripted, right? So that's just a lot to think about, and you want to find the opportunities of where we're going, not where we've been, if that makes sense.
It does. Tracy, any advice you would give to investors interested in this space?
Well, I'm thinking less about the stock market, but more in if I wanted to get into entertainment and I, you know, had $100,000, what would I do with that money? And I would say unscripted is the way to go, right? Like we have more networks who are making shorter orders, but I don't see, and it's a tight market. It's harder to sell things, but I see there's a lot of unscripted production. There's all types of shows. To David's point, in investing in an animation company, smart, right? Like I can't even tell you the number of opportunities for actors right now in that space. And that's increasing every single day.
Mm-hmm.
David.
Voiceovers are becoming more popular.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's great content. It's consumable, phone, television, what have
And you don't have to be present to do it. You can do it from a distance.
You
So
don't need
that
a
is
bubble.
very conducive to this
Exactly.
environment.
Exactly. And whether they find a cure for COVID tomorrow or 2 years from now, we're still going to be watching Archer and The Simpsons and things like that. So I think that's a smart gamble.
I was going to add to that too, you know, since COVID, what's very interesting is, well, Julia and I put our heads together and decided that we wanted to put together a panel like this, you know, a weekly what's happening and where are we going. And I think it's been a great experience. You know, we've the opportunity to, at least for me, to meet, you know, incredible people like you guys and just learn a little bit more about your businesses as well and share that with the general public. And of course, Juliet and team do a great job of getting that out. But it's interesting. I have like an cousin who was doing conferences too, and she has a company called like Morph Mom, and it's like women who want to go back to work after, you know, their kids are older. And I said to her, let's just like do something like a panel. And she started this like little happier hour, and it's once a week. It's called the Happier Hour. It's like once a week, and we're like the View now. It's like she's got, you know, the mixologist and the this and the guest, and it's really fun. So it's just sometimes it's just fun to have those distractions, you know, and just to lighten things up a little bit. So that unscripted.
Unscripted.
The innovation, I think the innovation, Kathleen, that's come out of this time, obviously it's been a really challenging time and a crisis for many people, but I think it was Einstein that says out of every crisis comes opportunity. And I think the technology and the innovation and people thinking differently has actually been a real benefit. David, I know you were going to mention something about investing, and I also want to
Oh, yeah. I mean, so if you have the chance to start a liquor brand with a major celebrity, I guess do that, because those seem to keep selling for $1 billion. But barring that, the one other thing I would just point out is if the global streamers are the prime movers of the next decade, you want to look at where their growth is going to come from. And their growth is going to come from Spanish language, French language, Arabic language content. It's not all English. And in fact, in English speaking developed economies, some of them are already close to capped out on the number of subscribers they're going to get, which doesn't mean that they can't stop feeding those people. I mean, obviously we all need new content if we're going to keep our subscriptions, but I think there are really big growth opportunities to be found by looking at other world languages in particular. And you're going to see that mark the next 5 years in a really big way.
Thank you. We've got time for a question. Justin, Douglas, if
Julia, I'm sorry to interrupt. We should just do a panel where we're all on it, but we just let David speak.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, great. Well, I have to argue, Tracy, you had a lot of really great insights too to share. David's fantastic, and so are you. So I think we've learned a lot.
I'm going to go back to all of my clients and just repeat what David said, and I'm going to look really smart.
Thank God this is taped, so we can review it and remember.
Yeah, right.
It will. Right. We have a video after this as well. Justin, are you there?
It's muted.
Hi, Justin.
Yes, I am now unmute. Can you hear me?
We can. Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yes, good to be here once again. It's dark outside here in the UK. Really great joining this. Very fascinating insight into an area which I don't have much knowledge of, so it's a real pleasure. So thank you to the panel for all your insights. My question, I've been doing a lot of thinking a little bit about things like travel after the pandemic has ended. My work, all my travel stopped, and I'm thinking, will there be this dash back to travel when it's all over? And particularly, I'm thinking there must be quite a lot of new elements of the production process that have moved off-site or stay at home. And because of the technology and the cost savings, might those stay off-site or stay at home after the pandemic is over, even though the people involved might be thinking, I want to travel again.
I mean, it's hard to predict human nature. So if you look at history, when the Spanish flu ebbed, everybody just went back to acting exactly as they'd been acting before. So it's possible that's the outcome. My instinct for our industry in particular is that business travel as it existed prior to this will not return to the same degree, frequency, or kind. I think conferences may go online that had previously been in person. I think certainly regular internal meetings, unless they absolutely need to exist in person, probably won't involve people flying all over the place. And that's not just because we've been habituated and because there may be some ongoing health and safety reasons to do that. It's because it's going to be a cost savings for the industry that they're going to realize that they can take in perpetuity. So
Cost of time.
I could be totally wrong, but my prediction is there's a fairly permanent shift in terms of business travel, particularly that, especially business travel that's not for actual production.
Yeah, and you know, that's from my perspective. I'm very interested in sustainability, and you know, the environment, and you know, that's got to be a good thing. I feel.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for
Thank you,
answering the
Justin.
question.
So final question for all of our speakers. What are you excited about for the industry right now? What bright spots do you see? David, do you want to start?
Oh, I mean, I think that the thing that if I'm to be excited about something, it's that there's been a real flattening effect that all of this has had, and people feel like they have more access to one another. We've all been humanized. Like, we've all seen kids and dogs or people stuck in their cars because they have no reception. And I think that's great. I think if we can preserve that sense that some barriers to entry and access have been lowered, that will be to our benefit in terms of who we create with and what we create. So I'm hoping some of that feeling of we're all in this together persists beyond this moment and yields some really good stuff.
Thanks, David. And Kathy?
I would just say that I do think that we are going to see some of the normal come back where people can get back to work and do what they love doing and start having, you know, the revenue come back to the business as well. And again, with people like David and Tracy, just listening to them today, it gives me a little bit more positive outlook on where the industry is going to go as well. So, you know, the Met just announced that they're closed for like another year, which was really sad to hear. And it's just so, like, it must be so discouraging, you know, for everyone. But I think we just have to keep resetting and looking for the future and knowing that little steps, do what we can while we can, and know that we have a longer term view where hopefully things will get back to a new normal. And David, you said earlier, the cost of production, you know, travel, and I sort of jumped in, and I don't know if you heard, but I also think the cost of time, people are not willing to give up that time anymore. There's a big price for that.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you, Kathy. And Tracy, close this out. What are you excited about, and what bright spots do you see?
You know, when I look at television today, it's so closely akin to independent film. When I look at the range of voices and shows that are on air, that's really refreshing, it's interesting, you know, everything from the docs like Last Dance, highly produced doc with, you know, a lot of celeb power, to Tiger King. I mean, did that not keep us through the, you know, the beginning of the pandemic? Was, I don't want to say thank God for Tiger King, but thank God for Tiger King. And then, you know, new voices on the scripted side, people like Katori Hall and, you know, the ladies behind Escape Kitchen, I guess it's called Betty now. We've been in a renaissance of television for some time, but I'm just excited about all of these young people that are coming out that are saying different things and in a new way. And I'm a huge fan of unscripted. You know, I sell a lot of unscripted, and I'm looking forward to a range of voices in that medium as well.
Tracy, David? Thank you so much. I found that absolutely fascinating. It was incredibly insightful and thought-provoking and also entertaining. So thank you so much for being on here. A special thank you also to Kathy Entwistle, Private Wealth Advisor at Morgan Stanley, for being our partner for this series. And most importantly, thanks to those of you that joined us today and for your great engagement. We hope you enjoyed it. Please do share any feedback with us. We'd love to hear your comments at community@worth.com and any topics that you'd like us to cover in the future. And we will be sharing a video for anyone else that wanted to join this that wasn't able to. So we'll share that and publish that on worth.com. Tomorrow at Worth Live at 11 a.m, join us for a discussion on re-architecting the future through philanthropy and social entrepreneurship with managing partner at New Profit Tulane Montgomery. And next Thursday, back with the next normal series at 3 p.m. ET, we'll be discussing philanthropy and ESG with special guests Ron Bruder, founder of Education for Employment, Kathleen Entwistle, Jim McCann, and some others. So please register online at worth.com/events for this, as well as sign up for our newsletters. In the meantime, be kind, stay well, stay safe, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.